Indian history is an important portion in general awareness part of any competitive exams. And in that, modern Indian history, that is the events coming after the 1857 revolt and up to the independence, plays a very crucial role in exams. To score a better marks from this part within a very short time, you want to know what are the important things that we want to study and how we can study it, because your aim is to score a very high mark in competitive exams and not to have a PhD or doctorate in history. So here we are providing you only the very important points in the examination point of view that you want to remember, and we have also included the repeated questions from each part. So go through this video with full attention to have a good score from history part. In first part of this series, we are discussing the events from 1857 to 1919, and we will see the events from 1919 to 1947, that is up to the independence, in the next part. Revolt of 1857 is an important landmark in the history of India, which occurred during the Governor Generalship of Lord Canning. The revolt of 1857 was a combination of political, economic, socio-religious and military causes. But the main reason for the revolt was the use of greased cartridge for the Enfield rifle. And Mangal Pandey, who killed 2 English soldiers, was the first martyr of revolt of 1857. The rebels captured the city Delhi and declared the 82-year-old Bahadur Shah Zafar as the Emperor of India. Though the revolt of 1857 occurred in different parts of North India, you want to know what are the important centers, the following 6 important centers of revolt and the corresponding leaders. In Delhi, Bahadur Shah II Zafar and his commanding general Bakht Khan were the leaders. And in Kanpur, Nana Sahib and his loyal commander Tantia Top were the leaders. In Lucknow, it was Begum Hasrat Mahal, and in Jhansi, as you know, Jhansi Rani Laxmi Bai, and Bareilly it was Khan Bahadur Khan, and in Allahabad it was Liaquat Ali. And apart from the above mentioned things related to 1857 revolt, the other repeated questions from this part are given with. The real name of Rani Laxmi Bai was Manikarnika. And who described Rani Laxmi Bai as a white spot in a dark background? It was Jawaharlal Nehru. And who interpreted the revolt of 1857 as the war of Indian independence? As you know, we are termed it as the revolt of 1857. We are calling it as the first war of independence. And who interpreted? It was V.D. Savarkar. And the Mughal ruler whom the mutineers proclaimed the Emperor of India, as I already mentioned to you, it was Bahadur Shah Zafar. And the Mughal ruler Bahadur Shah was deported to which place? He was deported to Rangoon. From 1885 to 1947 can be divided into 3 main phases. First one, from 1885 to 1905, it is known as the period of moderates or the moderate phase. And the period from 1905 to 1919, it is known as the period of extremism or militant nationalism or the extremist phase. And period from 1919 to independence, that is on 1947, it is known as the Gandhian era. We will see the first 2 phases in this part and the later in the coming part. Indian history is an important portion in general awareness part of any competitive exams. And in that, modern Indian history, that is the events coming after the 1857 revolt and up to the independence, plays a very crucial role in exams. To score a better marks from this part within a very short time, you want to know what are the important things that we want to study and how we can study it, because your aim is to score a very high mark in competitive exams and not have a PhD or doctorate in history. So here we are providing you only the very important points in the examination point of view that you want to remember, and we have also included the repeated questions from each part. So go through this video with full attention to have a good score from history part. In first part of this series we are discussing the events from 1857 to 1919, and we will see the events from 1919 to 1947, that is up to the independence, in the next part. Other repeated questions from this part, that is especially regarding the Indian National Congress, are the first Parsi president of Indian National Congress. It was Dadabhai Naoroji, who was actually the second president of Indian National Congress, who became the president of Indian National Congress on 1886. So please keep it in mind, he was the first Parsi president. And the first Muslim president of Indian National Congress was Badruddin Tibji, was actually the third president, and in 1887. And the first English president of Indian National Congress was George Yule in 1888. And the first woman president of Indian National Congress was Annie Besant in Calcutta session in 1917. You don't want to remember that particular year, but you want to remember the fact that first woman president was Annie Besant. But the first Indian woman president of Indian National Congress was Sarojini Naidu. She became the president in Kanpur session of Indian National Congress in 1925. And the first elected president of Indian National Congress, it's very important, he was Subhash Chandra Bose, and he defeated Patabi Siddharamaiah in Haripura session in 1938. Actually, the Patabi Siddharamaiah was getting support from Gandhiji. Even though that was the case, Subhash Chandra Bose defeated him and he became the first elected president of Indian National Congress. So please keep it in mind. And the only Indian National Congress session presided by Gandhiji was Belgaum session in 1924. And the first secretary of Indian National Congress, as I already mentioned to you, it was the Englishman A.O. Hugh. The second phase, that is the period from 1905 to 1919, is known as the period of extremism or militant nationalism or extremist phase. Why? Because the leaders during this phase, that is the prominent extremist leaders, were Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandrapal, who are generally known as Lal Bal Pal, and Arvind Ghosh. They actually adopted an extremist or militant approach against Britishers rather than having a peaceful approach. And these are the important events that occurred during the second phase or the extremist phase. The Partition of Bengal came into effect on October 16, 1905 through a royal proclamation, reducing the old province of Bengal in size by creating a new province of East Bengal, which later on became the East Pakistan and present-day Bangladesh. The government explained, that is, the British government explained that it was done to stimulate growth of underdeveloped eastern region of the Bengal. But actually, the main objective was to divide and rule the most advanced region of the country at that time. The main reason for partition of Bengal was to destroy the political influence of the educated middle class, among whom the Bengali intelligence were the most prominent. It also set up a communal gulf between Hindus and Muslims. The boycott and Swadeshi movement had its origin in the anti-partition movement, or the boycott and Swadeshi movement started against this partition of Bengal, which is very important. And the Indian National Congress took up the Swadeshi call in the Benares session in 1905, presided over by Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and supported the Swadeshi and boycott movement of Bengal. On August 7, 1905, a resolution to boycott British goods were adopted at a meeting of the Indian National Congress held in Calcutta. And the formation of Muslim League in 1906 was another important event. In December 1906, All India Muslim League was set up by Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka. The league supported the partition of Bengal and opposed the Swadeshi movement and demanded special reservation or the separate electorates of Muslims. And this led to a communal difference between Hindus and Muslims. So please keep it in mind, the partition of Bengal in 1905 and the formation of the Muslim League in 1906, and the two sessions, Calcutta session and Benares session. And the Calcutta session of Indian National Congress of 1906 is very important. Why it is very important is because of the reason that it was in this session that the Indian National Congress adopted Swaraj as its goal. In December 1906 at Calcutta, the Indian National Congress under the leadership of Dadabhai Naoroji adopted Swaraj as the goal of Indian people. Naoroji in his presidential address declared that the goal of the Indian National Congress was self-government of Swaraj or Swaraj like that of United Kingdom. But the difference between the moderates and the extremists, very important, especially regarding the pace of the movement and the techniques that should be adopted, resulted in a split in 1907 in Indian National Congress. Thus the Indian National Congress split into two groups, the extremists and the moderates, at the Surat session in 1907 held on the banks of the river Tapi. The extremists were led by Tilak, Lajpat Rai and Bipin Chandrapal, again Lal Bal Pal, and the moderates were led by Gopalakrishna Gokhale. And the formation of Home Rule movement in 1916 is very important. Bal Gangadhar Tilak founded Indian Home Rule League at Pune on 28 April 1960. And Annie Besant, inspired by the Irish Rebellion, started the Home Rule movement in India in September 1960. Then, an important step forward in achieving the Hindu-Muslim unity was the Lucknow Pact of 1916. The anti-British feeling were generated among the Muslims following a war between Britain and Turkey, which opened the way for the Congress and the Muslim League unity. Both the Congress and the Muslim League held sessions at Lucknow in 1916 and concluded the famous Lucknow Pact. The Congress accepted the separate electorate for Muslims, and both organizations jointly demanded dominion status for the country. So it's very important, the Lucknow Pact of 1916, in which Muslim League and Congress united and they demanded dominion status for the country. The other important questions, repeated questions from this part, that is the second phase or the extremist phase, are given below. The political freedom is the life breath of a nation. Who said this? It was Aurobindo. As I already mentioned to you, Aurobindo was an extremist leader. And Annie Besant started her Home Rule movement where? It was at Adayar near Madras in 1916. And Tilak started his Home Rule movement at Pune in 1916. The first president of Muslim League was Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka. I already mentioned it. And moderates and extremists reunited at which sessions of the Indian National Congress? It was in Lucknow session in 1916. The president of Indian National Congress during the partition of Bengal was Gopalakrishna Gokhale, and the president of Indian National Congress in the Surat split was Rash Bihari Ghosh. Though the revolt of 1857 occurred in different parts of North India, you want to know what are the important centers, the following 6 important centers of revolt and the corresponding leaders. In Delhi, Bahadur Shah to Zafar and his commanding general Bhakt Khan were the leaders. And in Kanpur, Nana Sahib and his loyal commander Tantia Top were the leaders. In Lucknow, it was Begum Hasrat Mahal And in Jhansi, as you know, Jhansi Rani Laxmi Bai, and Bareilly it was Gan Bahadur Khan, and in Allahabad it was Liaquat Ali.